Well, let's talk about how the month has been going at the halfway point. Hey everyone, welcome back to Andrew's Wizardly Reads, and as always guys, I am Andrew, and today we are doing the mid-month wrap-up / check-in for January of 2024. But before we get into that, please do me a huge favor, like this video and subscribe to the channel, as it does help the channel grow. And you can check the description box down below for links to all my social media, including information about my Patreon, links to the Discord, and all my other social media links that are there for you to explore. And that out of the way, it's been going incredibly well so far this month. I think I'm on my 7th book? Question mark? Maybe? Yeah, I think I'm on my 7th book at this point in the month, which is ahead of schedule. I do have 2 carryovers from 2023, but that's still a substantial amount of reading. I've had one kind of NFN, but I'm gonna air quotes NFN it. Basically, I've been kind of dealing with some like health issues, and so my reading's been very, very particular as I kind of process and deal with what's going on. And so one of the things that I decided to, I started reading was The Book of Ice, and that's Girl in the Stars by Mark Lawrence, and that's the first book. I got about 20% in, and I was enjoying what was going on, but I still kind of felt like I could predict almost what was about to happen. And I could tell where most of the trajectory of the series was going to go, and it just wasn't particularly calling to me at that particular point. So I'm not going to count this as an in-progress series because I only got 20% into book 1, but it's not a DNF either. I really think this could be just down to a mental mindset thing. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. In terms of what I have read, though, we have got Godfrey Under Siege by Mark Howard. And I read Godfrey's Crusade, I would say early 2023, late 2022. And this was very, very easy to get back into, especially for having been away from the series for so long. I was able to pick up cues within the text to remember what was going on. And I really, really enjoyed that. I also just love this cover art. Let's see if the camera will focus on it. I love this cover art because it's just, I don't know, it's just Godfrey standing up and obviously it's just, I don't know, it's so cool. Some of the issues that I had with this one is after everything that happened in book 1, we of course end up where we have 2 characters within a relationship. I don't really want to talk about the sequel too much because that could be considered spoilers. But essentially, the way that they act is kind of childish. And I understand that these people are still technically kids. They're 16 years old, 17 years old. They're still on the young side. But for me, it was kind of hard to read when they were kind of throwing a little bit of a fit or when something wasn't going their way. Those were my only real complaints. The heavy-hitting moments in here hit hard. The action is good. The watching them go and walk into something that you can clearly see coming, you're like, that's gonna bite you in the butt. And when it does, it's just see, I told you. I just really enjoyed those moments in this series. So I'm very excited to see what Mark Howard does next. And that's how I started off the year. This was a carryover. I'd gotten about 20%, 25%, maybe even 40%. I don't remember. I'd have to go back and look and see if it's on Goodreads where I marked it. But into that before the end of the year, and it kind of carried over, and I finished the last, we'll say 60% this year. Also, just a side note, we've got a new microphone, so hopefully the audio sounds good. Please let me know in the comments down below if the audio is good for you, if it is working, if it needs a little bit of tweaking. I am open to critique. Please let me know. That said, guys, I came back to King of Assassins by R.J. Barker. I really wanted to come back and finish this one, and I'm so glad I did. The issue that I thought was the issue was, in fact, the issue. And I'm going to clarify what that nonsense statement that I just made was. When I read The Greatcoats by Sebastian de Castell, I did half of the series on audio and half of it physically. And that's because they share an audio narrator who is an amazing audio narrator. He's very good, but he seems to, elevate the drama or the melodrama or the angst of whatever character he is reading for at the time. And I find that tends to get to me. And I think that's what happened when I finally got to King of Assassins. He's a fantastic narrator. Just for me, after a while, he starts to kind of just grate on me a little bit. I guess I should say grate. I don't know. How do you grate something? Maybe I'm doing it wrong. But King of Assassins, it was a fitting end to Girton's tale. The epilogue to this series was chef's kiss. Amazing. Whether or not I liked everything that happened in this book, the epilogue was fantastic. It was so incredibly good. If you haven't checked out Age of Assassins yet, you 100% should. Next up, we have got, well, that's one I'm currently reading, so we'll talk about that in a second. Next one I have finished is A Blight of Wings. I don't know why I'm rolling everything today, but that's what seems to be what I'm doing, by Kevin Hearn. And I started off the year with this book because Plague of Giants I had wanted to read, or I had read, I think late 2021, early 2022, and I just never came back to the series. And I thought that was a darn shame, considering how much I loved it. I did a dedicated review. You can check it out right there. I think I did a dedicated review. I don't know. The bar will tell if I'm lying or not. That said, Blight of Black Wings, it did take me a second to kind of be refreshed on what had happened, because there's a lot of characters, there's a lot of POVs. This is a very experimental type of storytelling, which I don't tend to like. And I did give this book 4 stars, mainly because of the storytelling aspect, where basically it's a bard who is then relaying multiple people's stories while taking on their visage and using his magic or his kenning. There's 7 kennings. The series is called the 7 kennings. A kenning is just a type of magic. But it kind of worked for me and it kind of didn't. There's a lot of humor in here. I also tried this one on audio, and the audio was amazing. And there was 2, it was like a male and female narrator. And it worked, and then sometimes it didn't. And what I mean by that is, like, whenever the male narrator would try and cover one of the female characters' POVs, it wouldn't work at all, because I'd already gotten that POV from the female narrator, and she would do it so much better than he would do it. I'm talking about one of the fire giants in the series, and I'm like, she does that character so much better. Please don't touch that. But the way this is done is it's dedicated chapter narrator. So basically, you would have the bard, which is always male, and then it would go into either male or female character POV, and whoever is the dedicated POV at that time, that's the voice, that's the narrator who's taking control. I've probably way over-explained this, so I'm just going to stop talking about it. Regardless, it was a fitting middle book. I'm excited for the final book. I do have that on the shelf now, and it's just been an absolute pleasure and delight to come back to Kevin Hearn's 7 Kennings. Then, of course, I read the second book in Eli Monpress. I am now 2/3 through this omnibus, and I really, really enjoyed The Spirit Rebellion. I will say it does reuse some elements from the first book. Like, some things re-happen where Yosef gets his butt kicked, of course, and then has to, like, get scolded by his sword and stuff like that. I'm like, okay, like, I get it. We did this in book 1. We're doing it again in book 2. But other than that, like, everything else seemed to go fairly well. Like, I'm so happy. I love the kind of the politics of the Spirit Court. Monpress is always a delight. The Duke is a very he's a tropey villain, but he's a tropey villain done incredibly well. Monpress is probably my favorite palate cleanser that I've read in a long time, and I hope more of you choose to start checking out this series. Then I also, before I forget, because I know I will, I read the last 53% of The Last Light, which is the 5th Wandering Inn book. And man, this was a return to form. I know the 4th book was like a setup book. It was trying to set up and like introduce new characters and kind of fill in some backstory and some justification and stuff like that. Like, I got all of that. It still felt kind of messy in terms of reading it in a book-like format, but book 5 just takes off running. Things are happening, and I feel like we've taken a shift to the darker side. And from what I understand, the next 3 books are called like Tears, Blood, and something else of Lascore. Oh, the Tears of Lascore, the Blood of Lascore. Anyway, Volume 5, I think, is going to take a darker shift in the series. and I'm here for it. I'm so here for it. Speaking of darker, we've got Stephen King's Mr. Mercedes. I am about 20% into this at time of recording. And guys, like, I had a couple false starts on Mr. Mercedes, where essentially I had started the book and I just couldn't quite, like, get into the narration because I know the actor. And so, like, it's like I'm looking at this actor reading, I think it's like Bill Paxton. Have I gotten that right? Is it Bill Paxton? I think it's Bill Paxton. Editing Andrew will chastise me or agree with me. But basically, he does such a great job. It's kind of a hard-boiled detective style of thing, and also the inciting incident is incredibly dark and gruesome because we're trying to find a killer who drove their vehicle into a group of people at a job fair. And it's incredibly hard to read that and then just dive into a book. But, I mean, once I dove in and I took that plunge, I am off to the races. I'm about 90 pages in. You can kind of see right there how far I'm in. I really, really, really am enjoying Mr. Mercedes. Whether or not I enjoy the entire trilogy remains to be seen. I've heard that can be very mixed. But the last book that I am currently working on right now is John Scalzi's Old Man's War. And I got about 40% into this before I realized I'm going to want the other books. I only have the first one in mass market paperback. Because I'm not a huge fan of mass market paperback, well, I bought them all in UK paperback. So hopefully they're a little bigger. I bought all 6. 40% of book 1 was enough to let me know that this is probably a safe bet for me and that I'm going to enjoy John Scalzi's work. There are some elements I'm not a huge fan of. There's a couple sexual scenes within the book that I'm just like, like, I can see why that's there, but I'm not really enjoying that. But at the same time, like, it doesn't cross the line. At least it hasn't yet, but it's approached the line. But other than that, like, I'm really loving the ideas. I'm loving the lore. I'm loving the world. I'm just loving the characters. So I'm very excited to continue this series. Now, that's everything I've read so far. I've still got, halfway through the month, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, at least 6 books that I would like to read from my shelves for the Read My Shelf Challenge. We've, of course, got The Will of the Many, which I got for my December book haul. I want to read this one quick because, well, frankly, I've already started this one. I've read about, I think, the first chapter, at least the first chapter, and I was blown away. I really, really enjoyed it, and I think that this is just going to be a book that I'm going to love. And that's surprising, considering I was very mixed on Mycanius, but I think James Islington, I don't know how to pronounce it. I'm going to say it the way that my brain tells me to say it, or he tells me to say it, but I've gone off on a tangent, and my brain has forgotten what I was going to say. But essentially, like, I had mixed reactions on Mycanius, and I think he's leveled up in his craft significantly. Then Spire Climbers by Rob J. Hayes. I'd like to get to this one, but if I don't get to it, I'm not going to beat myself up too hard. This is just a, hey, I've been wanting to read this ever since I saw it on my shelf. This reminds me of Sharon Dwyer, my patron who recently passed, and we were constantly talking about this series, and I would just like to read it to kind of know, and it would, make me think of her. I'm a very sentimental individual. Don't judge me. Anyway, next is Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. I might get a different edition of Rebecca, especially if I end up liking it, but I kind of got this from my mother-in-law when we were cleaning out her house after the fire, and I just kind of was like, hey, I heard Alan liked Rebecca, maybe I will too. I am buddy reading this with Joanna, and then I've got 3 books that I'm supposed to be buddy reading with Murphy. That's what I hope to get to this month. There could be some mood reading in there. We shall see. Really quickly, that's Cage of Souls, Sons of Darkness, and Throne of Jade. But that is where I'm currently at halfway through January. I hope your reading month is currently going well as well. I hope your reading month is currently going well. I only really had to say that, but that's all I really got for you today, guys. Sorry for the ramble. Till next time, peace out. Stay magical. Bye. And as always, I want to give a huge thank you to my patrons. Thank you for supporting my hobby and my passion.